On this occasion of dialogue on land conflict and investment risk in India, I am thankful to Shri Chaudhary, Executive Director of the Rights and Resources Initiative, and Dr. Shekhar Shah, Director General of NCAER, other senior participants. It gives me a great pleasure to be here to address you all at the inaugural session of the dialogue on land, conflict and investment risk in India. As correctly mentioned in the communication on the subject sent by NCAER, India's growing energy infrastructure, industry and development needs require substantial transformation in land use. This will have a significant impact on a large number of Indians. Clearly, this will lead to an increase in the number of land-related conflicts, which in turn could lead delays in implementation of projects. Consequential impact on project viability and financing, thus posing a huge challenge to the development of the society itself. As also noted in the same communication, this is not peculiar to India, but is a common problem all over the world. In the Indian context, it may be useful to keep in mind some basic facts. We are a country with a total land of 330 million hectares, of which only about 50% is hospitable. Agriculture accounts for a little over 150 million hectares, and that is 46% of India's land resources, but producing only 14% of India's GDP. And if we look back, when we got independence, our share was, agriculture share was more than 50% of the GDP. Now we have come down to even less than 14%. That is exactly, if I say it, should be 13.7 something. On the other hand, industry uses about a little over 1% of India's land, and urban centers account for a little over 2% of India's land. However, together these contribute nearly 2/3 of our GDP. Clearly, therefore, there is a great productivity related aspect of land use, and we need to keep in mind. This is, what should I say? I am talking something which I am mentioning to you. On the other hand, if we see that 330 million hectares, of which only about 50% is hospitable, and we are apprehending that if the entire country is urbanized, or if the entire country is in the service sector or in the industrial sector, only 17% of the land would be used for that. But we forget about 54% of the land which is not hospitable. What do you mean? I cite one example. I was state finance minister of my home state about 6-7 years back. And one of the entrepreneurs, he came with a suggestion that I want to have 5,000 hectares of land, 5,000 acres of land for nano city. And initially he was insisting that it should be near about Delhi, because Haryana covers 3 parts of Delhi, and any destination which can be very attractive for any entrepreneur that who sits and who would like to sit at Delhi and to work in the field, that is 50 kilometer. But we try to persuade him that why do you think of only in the 50 kilometer radius? We will take you to the Shivalik hills. There we have the land, and land would be very cheaper, and we can meet your demand. Ultimately he agreed, and then when we were to sign MOU with him, what I found was that there the choice not of the entrepreneur but of the state bureaucracy, state officer, was the plain land. When I put a question, pertinent question to the entrepreneur, Mr. I forget his name, I said, why don't you opt for land on the foothills? He said, yes, I am very comfortable, why not? But in our draft, which is to be signed, the land is not on the foothills. I said, what to do? This is your government offer to me. It's not my own judgment. And the second thing, very relevant question, because that site was also in the vicinity of Chandigarh. So my next question was, if you don't start or there are hiccups in your projects, what is your ultimate after 5, 10, 7 years? Would you go for change of land use from nano city to commercial use or residential use? Then reluctantly he said yes. So these 2 factors are very important when I am going through my text. The text may be written by my ministry, but my view is different. Why not to think of the land which is 54% other than the agricultural land, where we can put up any of the industry? But this is the mindset of everybody, maybe bureaucrat, maybe entrepreneur himself, or maybe people who recommend that here is a land which is more suitable to you. So this is one point which I wanted to make a mention. And given the normal historical trajectory of development, the question to ask is, can all the land for India's industrial and urban centers come from one fertile land? The macro answer is a capital no. A quick back on the envelope calculation shows that if the entire Indian population is to be housed in urban areas, and if every working person in India is employed in the industry and services sector, the quantum of incremental land required for this seismic shift is approximately 25 million hectares or about 17% of the land at present under agriculture. This is what I was explaining to you. The obvious next question is, if we do this, will we have enough land to grow food for all of us? The unambiguous answer is yes. As you all know, India has increased wheat yield 6-fold between 1950 to 2010. So significant increases of the above kind is possible, and this has been confirmed by agriculture scientists. In short, therefore, for India to prosperous and large numbers of Indians to participate in this prosperity, some of the land at present under agriculture use needs to be diverted and made available for industry and urbanization, while at the same time productivity in agriculture needs to be stepped up substantially. When Mr. Khare was making some notes, um, he talked about transformation of land use. That is right. When industry is to come, then naturally transformation means from agriculture to industry. But would it be on the basis of equity? Would it be basis of that more hands, which are now still we have 68% of hands involved in agriculture after 66 years of independence? And when I was a student of a school, we used to read and we used to listen that India is a country of farmers, agriculture. 85% of the population dependent on agriculture. They live in villages. Now that reduction is from 85 to 68%. But if you talk of the share of the GDP, that has come down from 51% to 14%. So, about a year back, I was reading one of the newspaper clipping that when a 700 crore population the world touched, the baby born at that time, there was a survey, and that survey showed that 1% of this 700 crore population is in possession of 18% of the assets of the world, and 23% of the population is in possession of 54% of the assets of the world. That means 17 plus 54, this is 71. 71% of the total wealth of the world is in possession of 1 plus 23%. That means 24% of the population is having 2/3 of the possession of the wealth of the world, and the rest is only participant of the 1/4 of the wealth of the world. That means agriculture is in that sector. They don't have the. So, what I say very frankly is, can a situation would grow when those 68% of the population be the participant of this 3/4 of the world wealth, which is controlled by 24% of the population? That is the question mark. That is you are to see. I am not a student of economics. I have never studied economics, but I still know something is wrong with the economics of the world also. How this kind of distribution? Who is going to tolerate for such a long time? This is totally discriminatory. However, micro picture is that what brings out the conflict embedded in trying to implement the macro message that I just outlined. On a per capita basis, India is land scarce relative to most countries. Once I traveled in the World Youth Conference. That was in 1986, way back in 1986 in Moscow. And the topic of that year was World Economic Order. And I was one of the delegates in that conference. What was haunting my mind was Why do they talk of world economic order? Why can't there be world population order so that everything can be sorted out? So these are the things we should, if you have a dialogue, you should not confine yourself to the economic aspect of that, and that too of the India. We should look at the world as such. And the main factor is, now I have seen the virgin land of Africa. They are inviting farmers all over the world, come, have cultivation, settle here. We don't have that population, we don't have that expertise. So these things are also to be looked. However, the micro picture is what brings out the conflict embedded in trying to implement the macro message. And by 2050, the land population ratio will decline fourfold in India, making India amongst the most land scarce countries. As per UN estimates, only Bangladesh, Mauritius, and Netherlands are expected to be per capita more land scarce than India. To put it in perspective, as per these estimates, in China, 2050 will have 4 times more land per capita, and Brazil will have 20 times more land per capita than India. All of this will actually get aggravated by a growing and prosperous India. As some thinkers have observed, geography has ensured India is not landlocked. Public policy should not make it land shackled. The serious challenge for public policy is to deal with the adverse micro consequences of this otherwise desirable macro shift. Let me now spend a few concluding minutes on how public policy can address this issue. Too much attention in the recent times has focused on land acquisition by public authorities. This is important for many nation building activities. Public policy should strive to strike a balance between justice for the land losers and the concerns of viability of projects. As mentioned by Mr. Shah, in the last 6 months, the most attractive and debatable topic has been land acquisition. And I, being the minister for the concerned bill, which we introduced in Parliament, I don't want to discuss politics on this, but one mention is very important. Should I? When this bill was discussed on the floor of the House, most of the member parliament sitting on the other side of the treasury benches, they were opposing this legislation. But one thing which at least 3 very important political outfits mentioned during their arguments, that 20 crore means 200 million. 200 million youngsters in the agriculture field, they are finding no work in agriculture. Agriculture has become a losing proposition for them, and they must find some avenue, something new where they can seek employment, they can seek jobs. This is one argument, and I completely agree on one account that if we are to progress, then we would be able only when we have an infrastructure to provide for the entrepreneurs, those who want to invest, those who want to join us, and even those who want that country should look forward. And alternatively, they may be providing the opportunities to those 200 million youngsters of the country. But when I questioned them on this, that this is your argument, but why don't you support the bill? Though there was no answer to the question, but the question that is answer is in my mind. They were addressing 68% of the constituency, which is the biggest constituency for any of the political party to make capital out of that argument. So this is where we must try to have, and I see people, those who are not connected with the up and downs of the economy of the country, of the world even, they know. I know certain things because I belong to a village. When after First World War, I am talking of the northern India because I know more of the northern India. Lot of soldiers, those who participated in that First World War, when they came back to their homes, they saw that the life is quite different where we have been to Italy and all that to fight, and we are a different world. Then they themselves came forward and said, we want to open schools. We don't have the funds. And I still remember in the early, what should I say, in 1911, a soldier salary was 6 rupees. And he used to ensure that at least, that time it was 8 anna. That means 50 paisa I must send by money order to my village where my school is under construction. So that is how we realized that they felt the necessity of agriculture, of the education. And now the time is very near when they would feel this, that why don't you put industry to our destination? This time is, but certain things may take time, and we are certainly going to that direction. However, it is in everybody's interest to adequately compensate and rehabilitate land losers in voluntary land acquisition, so that besides economic viability, social sustainability is also ensured. Because most of you would be talking on the economic nitty-gritties of how the country can be taken forward. There was a legislation which ensured for food security. That legislation is already there and it is passed, and now food is a right, legal right of all the Indians. In that way, I must say that when we afraid of one thing, that there may be scarcity of food grain, I don't think that situation would never come as far as my country is concerned. But the only thing which is which can be the part of your discussion is that every farmer, maybe the land holding may be less than 1 acre, if he is made one of the beneficiaries of the distribution system, the distribution system should not confine only to the below poverty line people, but every farmer, if he is made beneficiary, then what he will do is, he would see that even the consumption which is required over the year for his family, he may take that food grain to the market, because there he would be getting maximum support price, and at the end where the consumer is to get ration, he would be getting the same requirement 3 times less than the purchase which he has made. So that would make him that every grain he supplies to the market, and that way there cannot be any food security, no hoarding, no storage. And on the other hand, he would be saving something, because MSP would be more, and from ration depot he will get the ration at a much cheaper price. So these methods must be taken into consideration, because these are very small things, and when we discuss a lot of big things, we just forget that these are very essential to see that our food security concern, rather I should say it should not be any concern as far as this country is concerned, because there Rawalpindi, Ludhiana and Karnal, this is a track. If Pakistan's Punjab is not the part of Pakistan, then there cannot be any food available to rest of the Pakistan. We, Haryana and Punjab, so I mentioned that if you take the yield of Ludhiana wheat, that is highest in the world. It used to be, I don't know about the latest data, and the highest yield in Karnal district used to be paddy yield. And the same thing is Layalpur, that is in Pakistan. So we contribute 73% of our food grains kitty, and Punjab's Pakistan contributes everything to the rest of the Pakistan as far as food grain is concerned. So I don't think that a land where this kind of fertility is there cannot be any problem for that. So land acquisition is only, in my own words, when I see conflict in villages not relating to the acquisition, even if you change the specification or the demarcation of a particular field, even 2 feet, you will see his real brother is killed by the man who has done it. So this is how we think. The land is very dear to our heart, but it will take time when this people would come forward themselves. Okay, we are ready, have this land. Even in schools, if you are to open a school, if you are to open a hospital, small hospital, something in the interest of the village community, now at present they are ready to give land which is the ownership of the panchayat, which is a common land for the village itself. So that is no problem, but still I don't say that it's very near, but things would improve, I am very sure. The other question that we need to focus is on is proactivity, actively creating land markets, deep, well-functioning, liquid land markets, whether for outright sale and purchases or for lease and tenancy and other large numbers of segments rights need to be priority of public policy. That is, there I would take another 2 minutes of yours. About 6-7 years back, when this SCZ concept became very popular with the entrepreneurs, with the industrialists. Every industrialist came forward with thousands acres of land he wanted for the SCZ, and government was thinking that this is the way out when we would increase our GDP and all that, we would be able to make self-sufficient in our production, industrial production and all. But again, I repeat, the choice of all the entrepreneur of the SEZ, they were seeking land in the neighborhood of Delhi, in the neighborhood of Bombay, in the neighborhood of Pune, in the neighborhood of Bangalore. Why? Because they were sure that after some time they may be able to get the CLU change of land use, so that the land can be utilized for commercial and residential purposes. Why not to go 300 kilometers away from Delhi? Why not to go 300 away from Bombay itself? So these are the questions where we think, and if you see the result, I can't say about 10-20% of the SEZ functioning. Otherwise, there is no development as far as SEZ is coming up. Some of the distances in this direction has been traveled by the National Land Records. This in turn requires good quality land information system also. One thing which I want that you must take into account, in our country, we need consolidation of land holding. That is a one field where if it is made a national mission, automatically you would increase your production by 25%. I am a farmer. I have land in my village at 3 places. Though Haryana and Punjab, they are the first state after independence, those who were the front runner to get consolidation of holding completed. But after 60 years of that, now my holding at 3 places, and I am sure if my 3 places holding is put at 1 place, I may increase my production by at least by 20%. I am talking of a state which is responsible for green revolution, but I am talking of those states where there is no such consolidation of holding. If this is made a national mission, the production would go up. That is minimum which I have told is 20 to 25%. So these are the factors which we must take into consideration. This will also enable small farmers to obtain adequate financing and break the finance constraint and improve agriculture productivity and at his own lot. I am sure all the scholars assembled here will have a lot more to say on these topics and come up with practical solutions to the live problems which India faces. I wish deliberations a success. Thank you.